Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Welcome in, everybody. It's Sports Daily on a Thursday. Glad to be here with you in the slowest week of the season, of the sports calendar season. One more day of the All-Star break before we get Major League Baseball back underway and lock into that trade deadline. Of course, the Royals, we hope, will be active there. But there is a lot going on. Thank you, Big 12 football media days and some other storylines. NFL is always on the brain. We'll get to all of it today. Tim Fitzgerald joins us. His thoughts, our K-State insider, on what he's seen. K-State takes the podium today at Big 12 Media Days. KU took the podium yesterday. So we'll get into all of that, some of the storylines we're sort of sniffing around and seeing there in Arlington this week. I'm Jacob Albracht alongside Tommy Castor. Jad Chambers producing for us. The IHOP hotline is always open, 869-1240. We're going to give our friend Chelsea Messenger the week off, as there is not really anything to bet today. So we'll get back to our betting insider next week. We'll give away some Wind Surge tickets today. We'll give away a little coffee and iced tea from HTO today. A lot of ways for you to win prizes. Hope everybody who won those movie tickets will enjoy that tonight. Tommy, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, it's not nearly as humid and hot today. I think it's still going to be hot. We're in the middle of summer, but man, yesterday was absolutely brutal.
You know what's crazy about yesterday? I was leaving work at about 6:45, whatever time it is. And I was like, man, it doesn't feel as bad as I thought it would this time of day. And I'm in like a suit at that point. Granted, it was a walk across the parking lot. But last night, like going outside to let the dog out at like, I don't know, 9:30, 10 o'clock. I was like, whoa, like now it feels hot. That's what's wild to me about this part of the country. So it gets just as hot where I'm from in the Texas Panhandle. Like we get triple digits all the time, no big deal. But it's like a blow dryer, right? There's no humidity. So what happens at night is it cools off every night. Like you go outside and you get beautiful weather just about every night in the summer in the Panhandle. It's one of the only like weather things we can brag about there. But not here, man. It stays hot, hot, hot.
Yeah, I let the dog out last night and just standing on my front porch for probably, God, I don't know, 3 minutes. I'm dripping with sweat and I'm not doing anything. I'm just standing there. It's like oppressive, the humidity yesterday. And we actually, so very quick story. We had a leaky dishwasher earlier this week, led to some water damage, which, isn't good. So dealing with that this week, but we've got these industrial size fans blowing in our house to try to dry things out. But it's not like it's blowing a cool air. It's blowing a hot air. And so it was like 1 a.m. last night and our temperature in our house was like 81. Our poor air conditioner is like trying to keep up and like the worst time of year for that to happen. And of course, dealing with it on the hottest and most humid day of the year.
It makes me not want to complain about the fact that my microwave's broken. I feel
don't
like
complain about that.
I feel like I'm in the olden days heating things up in the oven instead of the microwave. And I'd say olden days with my tongue in cheek, but like, I feel like an idiot. I have to call my wife and be like, so, all right, like, how do I do this? Like, what temperature do I put it at? Like, can I just put it in a regular bowl and put it in the oven? Like, what are we going to do here? And I feel like such a dunce for not like just knowing this stuff. But yeah, no, I can't even complain about that because I've been where you are. I've dealt with the fans and the water damage and a hot time. I have been in that exact scenario and it sucks. So hopefully that gets taken care of pretty quickly for you guys as you also get to deal with a newborn baby in the house, which also adds a totally different wrinkle to the equation.
Great timing for all of it.
We're surviving All-Star Week, and you can't just like zone out, veg out, and turn a game on either until tomorrow. That is. But we have Big 12 media days, the football media days. They got underway yesterday. KU takes the podium. I thought that if you saw any of the reporting from TJ Cleveland on 12 News, who sort of focused in on a lot of different storylines, but the one that really had me interested was not being picked last this year and what that means. And boy, Devin Neal and Jalen Daniels, you could tell like that's a badge of honor for those guys who have put in a lot of time in that program. And for somebody like Devin Neal has ties to the program that go back for basically forever, to have them to the point where they're respectable. I mean, I think Devin Neal said in the interview we did that like this is why he went to Kansas to get back to this point, like sick of hearing the jokes, sick of hearing all the chatter, and then here we go. And they're not picked. There's 5 teams picked underneath them in the Big 12. And yeah, it's ninth. I get it. But it's a whole lot better than last. And there's such a difference too, Tommy, in like KU's going to now be a game everybody in the league is worried about. That's a massive change. What a great feeling it is. It's a great feeling from the outside, right? As a neutral observer to these things. Like I'm so happy for that team and the program and the fans and everything. I can't imagine how good it has to feel being on the inside.
Yeah, Lance Leipold even yesterday said that this is the first time in 20 years that the Kansas football staff returns all of their coaches, or I think that was the stat, which is remarkable, right? It's been 2 decades since there's been any kind of consistency, stability in the coaching staff. And of course, that's really important when it comes down to retaining players. They've got relationships with coaches. And if those coaches are sticking around and they want to be part of this as well, then more than likely the players are going to be a part of it also. You know, there have been a handful of recruits, and Leipold mentioned this at the podium yesterday also, that, you know, a few years ago probably would have never even taken a call from the University of Kansas football program. And now the program, they're talking to these players who are being actively and heavily recruited by other programs, major programs like Oklahoma and Kansas State and Texas in the Big 12, and then, you know, even others nationally. So there's a point of relevance now for this program. I think this is a crucial season for Kansas because, you know, it's up to Leipold and the players to show that last year was not a fluke, that the bowl game was not a fluke. The fact that they were ranked wasn't a fluke. You know, they return a pretty large portion of their roster, and then they've added on to it through the portal, through recruiting and all of that. They've got a point to prove that last year was not a flash in the pan, and that they can consistently build a program that they can be proud of and that can be relevant.
It's great, and it will be very important now. I mean, I think there is a degree of pressure on KU. Like last year, there was no pressure, right? No pressure whatsoever. We asked the question so many times because I was genuinely curious about it. Like, what if the wheels fall off of this thing when they got off to that great start? And it sort of started to do that, but it didn't have an impact. And that was a genuine question. Like, are people going to still be as excited if things start to turn? Well, they did. And yes, people were just as excited, right? Yeah. That though this year is going to be a little bit different. Like that, I don't even think it's a question. Like there is some pressure now to not fall back flat. Like you have to at least maintain, especially when you have Jalen Daniels, you have to at least maintain what you did last year. So like middle of the pack Big 12 needs to be the floor. And who knows what the ceiling is when Jalen Daniels is there. So that's important for them too. And I think they probably do feel that pressure because you're trying to get a new stadium built. There's all kinds of things happening, and it all sort of depends on this football team. And here we go. I'm really, really looking forward to their season this year. And even just that is such a relief, right? From what it's always been. Like just from like an interest standpoint, it's always been really difficult, and it always is when we do what we do for a living to try to like force relevance, right? Like how do we make this relevant? Because we know people care about it, but they're not giving us anything here. That's not the case anymore for KU. For KU for a long time, it was, paying coaches that aren't there, and just like the Les Miles mess, like all this stuff. And now it's about like each and every week, like what are their chances to win this football game? And can Jalen Daniels continue to be a dark horse Heisman guy? Like that's far better to do.
Yeah.
Even if you're a KU hater, that's far better.
Yeah. And, you'd like to think also that the distractions will be at a minimum this coming season compared to last year. Because remember, last season, while in the midst of them winning, Lance Leipold, there were rumors that he could go to Nebraska. That was
Yep.
going on for a few different weeks during the course of the season. Jalen Daniels gets injured. And then there's the whole distraction of Jason Bean, and can they at least get bowl eligible, and what does that look like, and can Jalen Daniels come back, and so on and so forth. So you'd like to think that this year Leipold is secure at Kansas and locked in. Daniels is fully healthy. And I think that one other thing that is, I think, really great for this program, I don't know, and we've seen this to an extent in his tenure as the coach at Kansas, but it was on full display at Media Days yesterday. The amount of national respect that Lance Leipold gets as a head coach.
Yeah.
I think it was it Pete Thamel from ESPN yesterday called Leipold one of the top 10 or 15 coaches in the country,
Just
or somebody from ESPN did. Yeah. Active coaches right now in the country. I mean, there is a significant amount of respect that he's garnered already from turning the program from a doormat to even just middle of the pack. And so if that can continue, that national respect will obviously grow too. And so it's been a long time. I mean, even, it starts with the coach. I mean, think back, I'm just going to call it for what it is, the laughing stocks that have coached Kansas over the last 15 years, from Turner Gill to Charlie Weiss to David Beatty to Les Miles. It's been bad. And now you've got a coach that garners respect in what he's doing to build the program.
Yeah, and you said laughing stock. I think like true laughing stock, Les Miles was the only one that fit that profile, but performance-based, yes.
Yeah.
It is such a refreshing turn, and now the pressure is on. I do think they were able to play last year pressure-free. Outside of the thought of losing Lance Leipold, pressure-free stayed. That won't be the case. Like, pressure starts immediately. Week 1, I mean, outside of the teams who legitimately think they're going to be able to, be in the mix for a national title, right, where you can't really afford losses in college football. But outside of that, like, they've got as much pressure to perform right out of the gates as anybody in the league, because they want people to realize, like, that was not a fluke last year. That's the goal this year, right? Last year was what we've been working toward. Now we're going to back it up. And this is not a flash in the pan thing. And I don't think anybody thinks it is, by the way. I mean, they were voted 9th out of 14. That's not bad when you consider what it has been recently. Ken points out on our video stream, by the way, you can catch our video stream on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as listen to us here on KFH. So if you'd like to, contribute that way, you can. If you're not able to jump on the IHOP hotline because you're at work or whatever, you can leave us your comments there. Ken points out the defense wasn't good last year. They got to shore that up. Of course, right? Like, that's the elephant in the room. You feel good about their offense. They return enough offensively that, you're feeling fine about that. The play callers, the quarterback, everything. Defensively, that is the difference in how much better they can get, is how much better they can get on that side of the ball. It's pretty hard to imagine them getting worse, Tommy. I think they, just by osmosis will get better because it was so bad last year defensively. So yeah, look, I'm optimistic. I think I would have put them 7th again, which is I think where they finished last year. That feels about right as a a floor. Maybe 9th should be the floor since that's where they were picked. But I certainly think they could get up and maybe flirt with that top 5 if the planets align and Jalen Daniels plays like he played a year ago.
Yeah, I was looking through their schedule yesterday, and I think I'm comfortable saying 7 wins, is kind of my expectation for this team, going 7-5. That's kind of where I put the bullseye. A couple of those are opponents that are new to the Big 12 that I'm not familiar with, at a high level. So that can be kind of a coin flip. But I do think that going back to the question about the defense, yeah, for sure. Like that is absolutely the unit that needs the most improvement. It's interesting because we saw the Kansas offense, go from terrible to outstanding in the matter of a year. Like that growth was very quick and very abrupt and very noticeable. With the other units, the defense, the line play, I think it's more of a gradual growth and a gradual evolution. And that starts with bringing in players that can compete. I watched so many Kansas games when they were terrible, and you could tell, and of course, coaches say it all the time, that the game of football is won in the trenches. You could tell that on both sides of the line, Kansas was completely overmatched by their opponents. You could tell, especially when they were playing like an Oklahoma or a Texas, even just the size and the strength of the linemen that OU and Texas and even other teams in the Big 12 had compared to Kansas. You're like, man, it's going to be a long day. I didn't notice that nearly as much last season. They're starting to bring guys in these other units that can start to hang. And the big question was, can they hang for 4 quarters? In some cases they could hang for 1 quarter, 2 quarters, but they could never hang on the entire time until last season. So I think we're going to see more of that constant evolution and growth on the defense and even on the line, where, that should help this entire team have more success this season.
So right now on BetMGM, and we'll talk a little about this as we're talking about Big 12 Media Days here in the first hour, Kansas is over-under on wins, Tommy, is 5.5. I'm comfortable with that over. That over is juiced down to minus 150. The under is where you're getting the odds. So, clearly the thought is that they can get over that. I think that that's fine. Kansas State's, by the way, is 7.5 right now. 7.5 is juiced way down on the over to 165. I also like that. And we'll take a look here in just a little bit, like what their schedule is, and like we'll count them out, because it's always a good way. You can look at it at just a general term, like, oh, they can win more than that. But we actually got to look at the games on the schedule and see if that math adds up. Here's the other one, real quick, that catches my eye. So Texas is almost even money right now to win the Big 12. Only Georgia, I think, has got better odds. That's a heavy favorite by Vegas. You know who the second is? Oklahoma at plus 325. Kansas State is third at plus 500 to win the league, which feels fine. Here's a bet that I'll pick your brain on, and we'll get into Texas and Oklahoma and that dynamic as we make our way through. Texas or Oklahoma to win the Big 12. So you can get those two teams combined at minus 250, or you can get the field at plus 180. Man, give me the field all day long.
Yeah,
in this
I'll take
league,
the field too. I'll
in
take the
this
field
league,
too.
like you never know. Look at what TCU did last year. The
Right.
two teams that were picked at the top last year finished near the bottom.
Yeah, and I'll take the field with plus money. I mean, for sure. I mean, that's a great value as far as I'm concerned. The other thing to keep in mind is the emotional play of all these other teams wanting to send Texas and OU out of the Big 12 without a conference championship. So I think that, and I don't know if that really plays out on the field or not, or if that's more of just a narrative that's created. But regardless, though, I think that I'm not in my mind at all comfortable taking Texas or OU to win the Big 12 in their final year in the Big 12.
It's real. I'll give you this. John Kurtz on Twitter was doing an interview, it looks like, with the deputy commissioner, Tim Weiser. I'm not sure how to say his last name. I think that's right. Talking about UT and OU. Here's a quote from it. I think their decision was more about affiliating with a group of schools they would rather get beat by Alabama than K-State or Florida than Iowa State. So,
Okay.
like you've got the deputy commissioner, like shooting cannons off here.
I love that.
Not just shots fired, like nuclear missiles. So I think it's real. And I think everybody does want to smack them a little bit. Maybe not the new schools that are like, I'm so glad you guys are leaving because it let us in the Big 12. But everybody else is like, yeah, screw these guys. Let's
let the door hit you on the way out.
Yeah. And it did. Like, bottom line, these other coaches, Like Texas and Oklahoma leaving, the bottom line is it cost everybody money, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, for sure.
So there's a tangible thing you can take from it if you're looking for motivation against those teams.
Did you see the some of the quotes from Mike Gundy yesterday at Media Day? I mean, talking about how Bedlam is done and how, he just the fact that he's not interested in scheduling Oklahoma as a non-conference opponent, that maybe they'll end up in a bowl game someday, but, highly disappointed that long-standing history and tradition is done due to the greed of OU and all of that. I mean, Mike Gundy's always a good interview. So that was definitely his thoughts on that yesterday.
I love Mike Gundy. I know he's had some things that rile people up, but as a character in the sport, I've always been in on Mike Gundy.
He's rocking a beard now, by the way, something new.
Yeah, I didn't see that either. I got to look that up.
Yeah.
Our personalities don't necessarily align or anything like that, but he's interesting all the time. And he's, right, wrong, or indifferent, depending on how you feel. He's thoughtful all the time. And you don't always get that, right?
Yep.
Like I appreciate that.
He's also the elder statesman now in the Big 12 as far as football coaches.
He's been there forever.
Tenured, been there long time.
If he was 40 then, what is he now, like 55?
Yeah, right.
Like
keep in mind, he replaced Les Miles as the head coach at Oklahoma State like 20 years ago. Been there forever. By the way, one other quick note, Chris Kleiman is currently at the podium for Kansas State as we speak. So I know we've got Tim Fitzgerald. We'll probably check in with him on some of those comments that Kleiman's making.
Let's look at those win totals for KU and K-State when we come back, and we'll just kind of take it down the schedule and look at if we can just, like logically and analytically see what we think of those overs. We'll do that. On the way out here, let's give away some Win Surge tickets. We'll do that right now. You can get a 4-pack of vouchers here, and what those are is good for any home game. You take the vouchers, you pick the game, and you go, courtesy of us here at Sports Daily. It's Albracht and Castor. We'll get those to the winner, who will be our first caller on the way out here, 869-1240 to the IHOP hotline. Jad will take care of that. We'll come back. Win totals in college football next on Sports Daily. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. Congratulations to Andre for winning those Win Surge tickets, courtesy of us here at Sports Daily. All right, some win totals here. Let's talk about this. So, just kind of been browsing on some of the futures markets here as we have time on our hands, waiting for games to kick in and camps to stick in and all these kinds of things. Kansas is at 5.5 wins at BetMGM. K-State's at 7.5. Now, the Kansas over last year in this part of the world had to be the most popular bet of all time. Like, everybody on the planet was hammering Kansas's over last year just because of the schedule as much as anything, Tommy. So let's look at the schedule this year. 5.5 seems low to me. It's juiced down to 150. But let's just look at it here. So you got to get to 6 wins. Missouri State is a win, right? There's one. Illinois feels like a win to me, but not, rock solid. So let's call it 1.5. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fine.
Nevada, if you're
should be a win.
Should be a win. So we can call that 2.5. It may be closer to a half win to 2. BYU at home. BYU, by all accounts, is going to be down next year. They're picked ahead of them. I think you can call that a win in the opener. So there's 3 or 3.5. Texas, I think we can say no. UCF at home is real dang interesting because they were picked the highest. They have Gus Malzahn, and by all accounts, the talent there is the best of that group that's coming in. But it's a home game, Tommy. And I think at worst you call it like a coin flip. So let's call it another half win. And then that would put us where? At 3 or 4? 1, 1.5, 2.5, 3. That put us at 4. Okay, with UCF. At Oklahoma State, I still don't think you count on that, right? Going to Stillwater. Then you've got a home game against Oklahoma. I think for a betting purpose, let's not count that. Let's not count that for a betting purpose. It's homecoming. I think there's a great chance. Maybe it's a half. Let's call it a half, right? So we're at 4.5. Iowa State on the road. I don't think you ever bet Iowa State on the road. I think we leave it at 4.5 with Iowa State. Texas Tech at home. Okay. That's a really interesting one. I think it's maybe another half at best. So that puts us at 5, right? Kansas State would be a no, even at home. And Cincinnati, even on the road, I think would be a yes. So there's 6 if you're going by half games on coin flip games, which is right at the over. So, you know, it's an odd thing. It just sort of depends on how good actually, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are. That's why it's difficult to do this, but that's also why that number is where it is. I mean, just looking at the schedule and being as fair as we can possibly be, it's around 6, which is just barely over. So, that tells you that the range, probably of 7 to 5 is realistic.
Yeah, I think so too. And those coin flips I think are fair and valid. I think that while I wouldn't bet Kansas on the road in Ames at Iowa State, I think it's certainly a winnable game. And that could be, I think one that you look at for sure. Because Iowa State, I think, is going to be down this year. But it is tough because you're on the road. And then of course Oklahoma State was picked, somewhere right around Kansas in the preseason polls by the media. So again, you're on the road at Stillwater. That one's tough also. It's going to be essential. And it was this way last year too, essential for Kansas to win their non-conference games, right? You got to win. You got to win all of them in non-conference. Illinois, I think, is going to be the question mark. They were an improved program last year. They're at home, or the game is in Lawrence. So Kansas is at home for that game. But it's not, outside of Missouri State, a cupcake walk in the park non-conference schedule.
It's not. I do like that game coming like early in the year when maybe you can catch a team on its heels a little bit. Like, I think Kansas will come out grooving offensively. So as other teams might need a minute to find a groove offensively, I do like playing Illinois in a team like that early rather than late, probably. And look, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Kansas's schedule is tough, but it's at least advantageous in that the really tough games all come in Lawrence. So, home field advantage has to play a factor there. Their schedule is tough, but almost all the tough ones come on the road. That also means it makes it more likely you win those road games in the league, which is good for win totals, right? That's an interesting one. Okay, so they're at 5.5. It's certainly not like it was last year where it's just like, oh my goodness, just hammer that. There's a scenario where you could see it going under based on the schedule. Let's go to K-State. 7.5. This is juiced down even more. SEMO is a win. Troy is a win. There's 2. I think at Missouri is a win. There's 3. I think UCF at home is a win. There's 4. At Oklahoma State, again, I wouldn't count them out so quickly. But, I mean, for Kansas State, let's call it a half, I guess. 4.5 at Texas Tech is probably let's not count on that.
I'd say a half on that one too.
A half at best. Okay, so then we're at 5. Home against TCU, they lost a ton of players. I would say yes. 6. Home against Houston is 7. So we're already there. Then they would just have to find a win at Texas, at home against Baylor, at Kansas, at home against Iowa State. Like, I think hammering the Kansas State over 7.5 makes a lot of sense because I think they're probably going way over that, Tommy.
Yeah, I think so too. Just the way that their schedule plays out on the front end of the schedule, like we just went through, I think that they can get to that win total and still have several games to go in their overall schedule. I know there are a couple of road games that I think would give you just slight pause because they're on the road. But man, I think that it's a very favorable schedule for Kansas State.
I do too. I think that, I think it is an incredible opportunity there. And if you're on the betting sites and any of them offer up like a boost to a bet or something, and you can get that minus 165 closer to even money, I like it a lot. As and futures bets are hard for me because I'm very, 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 very impatient. Like I don't like waiting on them is difficult for me to do. So it's always hard anyway. I'm definitely more of a, whatever, bet what's out there right now. But that's one I like quite a bit as we look at that. I told you, I like the field against Oklahoma State and Texas at plus money. I like that a lot too. I don't, and that's not a knock on Oklahoma and Texas. Have you watched the Big 12 like ever? Giving somebody the field against a team or two when they have to play, by the way, they got to play a conference championship game where anything can happen. Texas could go undefeated in the Big 12 regular season. The next closest team has 3-4 losses, and they still would have to win and win a conference championship game. So that's another one I really like, is taking the field against Texas or Oklahoma, but it brings up the conversation, Tommy, about Texas, who is a pretty heavy favorite here. That surprises me some, that they're as heavily favored and as because the voting didn't even really go that way, right? It did by first place votes. They had a pretty healthy number, but by total points, like I just don't, I guess I don't see them in a league like this as that big a favorite.
I go back and forth on that. I don't know. I mean, I'd love to know kind of what your, like how you draw that conclusion, because I feel like I'm kind of on the fence with that.
Well, because I think, one, the league is too good and unpredictable, right? I think you got to take a track record into the equation too. Like Texas still, even last year, right? Like Texas is, they have letdown games all the time. Let me ask you this question, and maybe it should start right here. Who's Texas's starting quarterback? I mean, it's
Arch Manning. I mean, right?
No, it's Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers won that battle. Like, how much confidence do you have there out of the gate? Right. And I know they're talented, but man, they're always talented. Always. And what does that talent turn into? I'm not saying that I don't think they're the favorite to win the league. I think it's very, very close between them and Kansas State. I think Kansas State has far more you can hang your hat on. I think Texas has a chance to just have insane, but Texas lost Bijan Robinson, which is basically their entire offense, right? Like they have to still replace him too. Yeah, Kansas State lost Deuce Vaughn, but you could easily make the case that Bijan Robinson was just as important to Texas's offense as Deuce Vaughn was to K-State's.
I think, I get that for sure. And I understand that. I wonder though, how much you lean on just the expertise of Steve Sarkisian. And he's had a little bit of time now in that program to build it the way that he wants, right? And we talked about it the other day about how there's always these expectations on that program. And it seems like now going into this season, the expectations are greater than they've been in quite a while with the Longhorns. I think you lean on just the veteran presence that team has for the most part, and their head coach. Again, I'm not willing at this point to say that I think that they are going to win the Big 12. I think that Kansas State has just as good of a chance as any other team in the conference to do so. But I'm trying to find what the pundits or because it's the media poll, right? What the media thinks and sees in Texas to put them at the top. And I wonder if it's just because they're Texas, the benefit of the doubt. But I do like Kansas State's schedule.
I do too. I don't remember, like we looked at it, and the one thing that's tough about it is the toughest games that Kansas State plays come on the road. So that's sort of the difference. Like their totality of games probably looks a little better than Kansas's, but Kansas gets all the tough ones at home. Kansas State gets all the tough ones on the road. And that's the hard part here. Now, I do think though Kansas State is built to win on the road, right? Because if Kansas State's season goes as it has it planned, how's that going to go, Tommy? They're going to play good defense. They're going to control the lines. They're going to run the ball, and they're going to make explosive plays. Controlling the lines translates anywhere you go. And they return their entire offensive line. I don't think there's going to be a better offensive line in the league. They lose Felix Anudike-Uzomah, and that becomes, to me, the biggest question on this team. I think the replacement of him is probably more difficult to imagine than the replacement of Deuce Vaughn, because we know that there's some people in that backfield, and they brought in some guys that are talented with that line that you feel pretty good about it, right? Like you feel okay about what production will come from the backfield based on as much on the offensive line as the guys standing in that room. But on the defensive side of the ball, when you lose one of the better pass rushers in college football and one of the best you've ever had at your university, that now becomes the part that for me is going to be pretty critical.
Yeah. And look, there are massive pieces, especially defensively for Kansas State that they don't have anymore in Anudike-Uzomah and Julius Brents. And we discussed it earlier this week that they're going to have, some of the younger guys step up, and Kobe Savage is one of those guys that we saw flashes of last season. And he needs to take that leadership role on the defense for sure. And there are others without a doubt, but that really, I remember last season, there were a number of games that it was sort of watching a Jekyll and Hyde defensive unit. Like sometimes they were outstanding, like lockdown defense. Then there were other times that you're like, what is going on defensively with Kansas State? So I'm looking for consistency defensively for this team this season. That's going to be difficult to do considering that, their top players are not going to be playing in the NFL.
I cannot wait, man. K-State's talk. We're going to get a recap of sort of what the vibe is from K-State as we make our way through. Tim Fitzgerald joins us at the top of the hour, so we'll do that. It's Big 12 football media days. That's where we're spending the majority of our time today because why not, right? Like we're almost through this slowest week on the sports calendar. Hang with us. Next week we got TBT. Right after that we got training camp. It's all. Put rocket boosters on things after this week. But thank goodness Big 12 Media Days because there have been a lot of interesting things. We'll continue those conversations as we make our way through. It's Albracht and Castor at Sports Daily. The IHOP hotline is open, 869-1240. We'll come back with more right after this.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. It's Sports Daily here on the Thursday edition. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor with you on the program today. Glad to be here, making our way through. We've got Tim Fitzgerald coming up at the top of the next hour. 869-1240 is that number to call. Excuse me. It's real hot outside today. Something great to beat the heat is iced tea, right? So we've got some cards to HTO. It is also, Jad, double drips day at HTO, which means people can get double rewards points. The rewards program is great if you go in there and you don't have it downloaded. So today you can get double your points, which just kind of get you free stuff. We've got cards to get some free tea. Let's do that. Let's give away 2 iced tea cards, Jad. So these will be good for either HTO location, East or West. West, it's 13th and Tyler. East, it is 21st and 127th. It's double drips day. These will get you a couple of iced teas. If you haven't been in, now would be a good time to take an opportunity to get a couple free ones. If you have been in and you're a fan, well, you get a couple free ones. So 869-1240 will do. What's that, Jed?
Phone lines are lighting up.
Ooh, okay. So we're gonna take, if they're lighting up, let's get lucky here. Let's take our, I don't know, third caller, Jad. 869-1240. Third caller that Jad picks up will get a pair of iced tea tickets to HTO. Boy, it is a good time for iced tea as it is warm outside, little steamy outside. Okay, so coming up in the next hour, we'll get with Tim Fitzgerald, our K-State insider. He's been locked in at Big 12 Media Days, any of the interesting storylines he's seen. We went over some of the betting angles on that, if you missed any of that, and we'll get more into this later. But if you did miss the win total talk, you can go back. You can listen to the show on demand on the Odyssey app at kfhradio.com. Both places. Jad always puts those up at the end of the day. So those are available sort of as podcast if you want to do that way. And a reminder that you can also catch our video stream on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as well. A little programming note for me. I'll be on CBS Sports Radio nationally this weekend. So you'll have me at some part, depending on Royals coverage. And I haven't looked at the game time Saturday, but I'll be on nationally from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central. And I got to tell you, on a slow time of the year doing a 5-hour shift, things get pretty interesting on that. So I'd invite you to join me there if you can, and on the parts that you're able to hear me, and call in there nationally and have some fun as we get through. Again, we're almost there. Like, we keep calling this the slowest week on the sports calendar because it is. You get the All-Star break, you lose Major League Baseball. But next week, like, it doesn't last very long for us here because we get the TBT starting next week. Marcus Morris is talking about the Mass Street Live team today. And the games are next week. Like, all of a sudden, the TBT, boom, it's here. And, the aftershocks, and we'll try to get a couple interviews maybe on that either tomorrow or early next week. But, man, the aftershocks have become a force in that league. They've gotten really good at this tournament format. So looking forward to seeing if they can do it. And then we get K-State with an alumni team, purple and black, and we get KU with a star-studded alumni team. They're back for the second time. Hopefully it goes better than the first time. You remember the self-made team the first year, and Perry Ellis got hurt early in that game, and it just really deflated everybody in there. But this team is loaded with talent. Now, we know that doesn't always equate to wins in this tournament. Experience is king in the format and the Elam ending, which we love very much as well. But Wichita State, the Aftershocks, they've gotten really good at it. We've got, of course, all the celebrations of that Final Four team coming. Fred VanVleet will be in town. We know that Takale Cotton, Clay Anthony Early, Ron Baker, Evan Wessel will be there. They'll all be celebrating that sort of in tandem with the TBT tournament. So it's going to be a great, great week in Wichita next week for basketball fans all across the board. We'll come back. Tim Fitzgerald joins us as we return on Sports Daily. We'll get you an iced tea winner. We'll come back with that winner's name in hour number 2 right after this.
and give us your thoughts.
It's absolutely crazy.
316-869-1240. This is your home for sports. 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Sports, entertainment, guy talk. That's who we are. 97.5 and 1240 KFH. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
He's got all the insight on what you want to know, and maybe some of what you don't want to know. Here's K-State insider Tim Fitzgerald.
All right, welcome back in, everybody, to Sports Daily. Glad to be with you here with us on the air. Fitz, it's been a couple weeks. We got Big 12 football media days, starting to get those juices flowing a little bit. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's a little chaotic down here. We just wrapped up with Chris Kleiman on the podium, and he's done his breakout interviews. So Gus Malzahn's up right now from UCF, where he just wrapped up, and it's the first two of the 7 coaches we're going to get today.
And we had KU yesterday. Things are in full swing down there. We had Brett Yormark yesterday. Plenty to get to. But, I mean, start us off. Chris Kleiman is the kind of guy who's going to drop bombshells in these type of interviews. So what just, like, absolute juicy piece of gossip did he lay on you down there?
I don't know what Chris Kleiman you've been listening to, but you know, the interesting thing was a lot of media was curious that, you know, you're defending champions and you got a really good team, but you weren't picked to win it. He said, I love it. I love it. You know, that's what a coach wants. And a lot of talk about Will Howard, about some of the, you know, guys they return and how could you possibly ever replace Deuce Vaughn. You know the drill. You know, sometimes when guys and media people that don't normally cover the team start asking questions, you go over familiar territory, but he's optimistic. You can tell he brought 4 great young men, and that's my biggest pleasure in covering K-State sports. Look, the titles are nice. The big bowl games are great. They're fun for an old media guy to do, but being around guys like Will Howard, Cooper Beebe, Daniel Green, and Kobe Savage, the 4 players here, they're just tremendous young men, and it's a great pleasure to cover them.
What do you think the vibe is, Fitz, like from the outside, the perception from the outside of what K-State can be? Are you getting, you know, this feels like a year where, you know, I don't care what the vote is. Nobody's sleeping on K-State, the defending champs or the returning NFL caliber quarterback and the entire, I mean, they're not going to sneak up on anybody this year.
No. And in fact, he also said that he enjoys that. And of course, when he was at North Dakota State, you know, that was the situation every game. You were being hunted instead of the hunter. And it has changed for Kansas State. People now are aware of what he's doing and how effective it's been. The weird thing is, if you look at the vote totals for, you know, the media poll that put Texas 1 and K-State 2, the actual votes are very close. The first place votes are not close, meaning that I think as a group, the media all put K-State in, you know, generally in the top 2 slots, if not the top 3 slots. Well, Texas had a lot of volatility in their voting, you know, probably down in the middle of the poll by a lot of people. And of course, a lot of them voted them number 1. And there's no doubt Texas is the most talented team, but I think K-State has shown that setting aside the physical matchup, what doesn't decide games every time, that Kansas State can compete at the highest levels, and certainly might be back here in Arlington inside this football stadium in which I sit right now for another championship game. At least I believe that will be with Texas Tech, but we'll see how the season plays out.
It's been really fun to watch the development and the play of Cooper Beebe on the line. I know that Chris Kleiman mentioned at the podium that, you know, in his mind, Beebe is going to be a guy that plays on Sundays. What do you see from him this season as far as anchoring that offensive line for the Wildcats?
Yeah, you know, he's one of those guys that he opted to come back. He could have easily gone out after his junior year. He probably would have been a in the top 3 rounds of the draft. But now, he's a perfect definition. If you come back, maybe your value rises. So if he stays healthy, and knock on wood for Cooper that he does, he's going to be a first-round guy. He's a dominant interior lineman. I see him more as an NFL center, combining his physicality with his intelligence. We'll see how that plays out. And they returned everyone across that line. That line came back as a unit. And don't forget, included in that is Taylor Poitier, the starting interior lineman opposite Cooper Beebe, who's been injured 2 seasons in a row. He's run out of needs to injure. And Chris Kleiman has said that he looks fantastic. He's running and moving, and he's healthy. And I expect, despite the fact that the entire line returns, Taylor will probably be in that starting lineup, along with some young guys advancing. And football, my friend, if you're good on the offensive line and they can set a tone, you're going to be a good football team.
I think that everyone, and I totally get it, wants to think like, how do you replace Deuce Vaughn? But for the reason you just talked about, I'm not nearly as worried about that as I am worried about how you replace Felix Anudike-Uzomah. What does that side of the ball look like? And are they they sent 3 guys to the NFL from that side of the ball? That to me becomes the biggest question for K-State is, how does that side of the ball look?
Okay, I'm going to say something probably a little bit shocking. I think of the 3 guys they put in the league, the one they will most easily replace is Felix Anudike-Uzomah, because of their depth at defensive end and the fact that a guy like Khalid Duke, who 2 seasons ago was supposed to be the star defensive end and got hurt, and Felix had his opportunity to play more, and we know what happened. Well, Khalid came back last season, played at linebacker, grew as a player, but it was clear that's not his spot. His hand's back on the ground. He will be in that spot that Felix was. They're different players. He's more of a power rusher. And Felix was so explosive and bendy. But I think Khalid's going to be fantastic. And Nate Matlack comes back from being injured most of last season. And Brendan Mott is the leading sack player coming back in the Big 12. That's a great threesome for 2 spots. And I think they're going to be really good. The guy I'm worried about replacing is Eli Huggins in the middle. And he wasn't even drafted because he blew his Achilles. I don't think he was going to be drafted, but he blew his Achilles at Pro Day. But you've got a great safety in Josh Hayes and an incredible corner at Julius Brents. And so those spots give me more concern than that rush-in spot.
Fitz, on the offensive side of the ball, I know that the Wildcats went out and brought in Treshaun Ward, but I'm wondering, can DJ Giddens be the lead back on this team? And can he be one of the guys that you look at in the conference as one of the best running backs? We saw flashes from it last year. Deuce Vaughn isn't there anymore. So that timeshare, you would think it may not be quite as in place with Ward. What kind of impact do you think Giddens can have running the football?
That is up to DJ Giddens, being able to expand his knowledge of the playbook, really be on point with all of that. He can run the ball effectively, guys. I really like him with the ball in his hands. He was effective between the tackles. He always falls forward. And for a running back, that is your greatest gift. Because even if you're hitting the backfield, if you're falling forward and still making progress, you can get back to that line of scrimmage. But I think the most surprising development about DJ last year was his ability to catch the ball. He had some absolutely fantastic receptions. And that's a layer that it's so important in the K-State offense, because as they bring in Treshaun Ward, catching the ball hasn't been his forte as much. They didn't use him in that very much at Florida State, and he didn't get in a spring really other than some drills because he was injured. But he's healthy now, and I think those two combined will bring some different layers to the K-State offense that Deuce Vaughn was such a big part of it, but now they're going to turn some other pages here that I think will be effective parts of this offense.
When we look around the league, UCF, you mentioned Gus Malzahn. Are you with the masses? Is that the team that could make noise potentially in the Big 12 in year one?
Yeah, we as the media in that preseason poll have been so lousy. I mean, nobody saw TCU and K-State in the championship game last year, and there it was. If there's one incoming new program that could make some noise, it is UCF. Why? Well, first of all, they've been recruiting the state of Florida. You've got athletes. You've got players. You got some dudes over there. And Gus Malzahn is an SEC coach. I mean, he's been at that level before. He's played in Manhattan, Kansas with his Auburn team. And I think that will translate to the team. And what I appreciate about all these teams coming in, more UCF recently, Cincinnati recently, BYU certainly, and Houston maybe a little bit farther back. But they have a fearlessness about playing at this level. They've played good teams. They've played elite football. Where they'll finish, I don't know. I think the media really struggled. I know I did because 3 of those programs ended up in the bottom 4 or 5 of this conference in the preseason. And I don't think it'll play out that way. This conference this year, because of the new programs and the state of Texas in football, the University of Texas, and Oklahoma football, Texas has something to prove. I got to see it to believe it. Oklahoma is teetering, man. They've got an easy schedule this year. They got a cupcake schedule. And if they don't make a breakthrough, they're in trouble. This is a volatile conference, and it's going to be incredibly entertaining.
One other newcomer that intrigues me a little bit is Houston, just with the history that Dana Holgorsen has in the Big 12 from being at West Virginia for a number of years. And he's a veteran coach, and they've been, I think that his presence, it's been, I think good for the most part for Houston. It's not been all good for them, but what do you see from a veteran coach like him and the fact that now he's returning to the Big 12?
Yeah, I don't think he survives the season.
Really?
He and Neil Brown at West Virginia, they play each other, and I think that might be a game of survival. Houston knows it needs to kick it up a gear, and last year they kind of slipped back down the solid railway a little bit. They weren't going in the right direction. They were supposed to be really good, and they weren't. Now their level of competition is up. But because of his exposure to the Big 12, Coach Holgorsen knows exactly what he's getting into. And he flat out said yesterday on the podium that this is a whole different animal than the American, in the fact that there are no weekends off and that you can just count on a victory. And he flat out said there used to be one in the Big 12, and now that's a huge challenge. And as a reference to Kansas, every week in this conference is a significant challenge. And as we saw last year, late in the season, Kansas State goes to West Virginia. There's no doubt who the better team is. And yet, Kansas State had to fight and claw to get that victory. That's the way it is every week. And I think Dana Holgorsen knows in so many games decided by one score, maybe it's you that gets that one play, that one break that gets you the victory. And he's exactly right. It could happen today.
All right, so Fitz, let's talk a little betting. We were looking earlier. Kansas State, according to BetMGM's win total right now, is at 7.5. We look at the schedule and we see over 7.5 as not a terribly difficult proposition just based on the schedule logically. You good with over 7.5 for the Cats this year?
I would take that in a heartbeat. It started at 8.5. I got it at 8. Because I'm confident of that. Again, with the volatility of this conference, you can see them ending up at 8. They think they're going to get to 10, 11 wins, before the championship game. But again, maybe it is 8. And at least I was able to get the push if things don't go right. But I would take 7.5 in a heartbeat. I think Vegas likes losing money on K-State win totals because they end up getting beat on that year after year by projecting K-State to not be as good as they turn out to be.
I want to shift gears really quick here, Fitz. Basketball real quick. Didn't have you obviously on last week. You were on vacation, but we talked to Ryan about this. Want to get your thoughts on it. With the visits and the potential of those West Virginia transfers coming to K-State. Neither one of them ultimately happened. So where do things stand in your mind right now with where Jerome Tang is at with the basketball program? Is there anybody else on the radar, anybody else that he's looking to target to bring in?
Yeah, honestly, Tommy, I haven't delved into that. I flew from vacation right here. But I think they feel good that they're going to fill the 2 spots. They thought maybe they had one possibly both of those guys. But again, the NIL ends up to being a wild card in all this. And Jerome Tang has been very clear in talking to some of us about NIL. They're not scared to play the NIL game. They will. But if a kid is solely picking a school on how much money he can make, if someone offers, $5 more and that's his choice, they don't want him anyhow. That's not the investment they want from a young man. That's all about, what can I get for myself? That's not the selfless kind of locker room they're trying to build. And I think what happened, how it transpired, made it real easy for them to move on, kind of lick their wounds and quickly pivot to whatever's next. And there's still some quality players out there. And I kind of sense that with their AAU ties, they might end up finding a kid that reclassifies and can come into K-State in redshirt. They just need the bodies. They need another piece maybe on the floor, but they certainly will take a developmental piece to invest for the future.
I want to go to football real quick. Brent Venables well, Fitz. Oklahoma's getting a lot of love, and maybe the schedule is the reason why. They're the second odds-on favorite by betting to win the league by a pretty healthy amount. Are you in on Venables in Oklahoma this year, as last year being an outlier, or where are you with the Sooners? I have no idea how to look at them this year.
I'm not bought in. They went heavy into the transfer portal, particularly along the defensive line. He knew he had to get his defense better. The offense wasn't as consistent as he needed. I think Dylan Gabriel is a very good quarterback, but he's not elite. And I'll just be really honest here. They have the softest schedule I've ever seen of traditional power play. One of the biggest brands in football is not playing a Power 5 non-conference game. And then look at who they play to open the conference. Cincinnati and Iowa State. And those teams are picked at the bottom of the conference. If they're not 5-0 at that point, they're in trouble. I mean, this team isn't very good. There's no reason they shouldn't be unbeaten after those first 5 games. And that tells me that last year's 6-7 record might be equivalent to being 8-5 this year. There's no reason, based on that schedule and the talent level that this program brings in year in and year out, that they shouldn't be in double-digit wins. And I personally think anything short of that shows big signs of trouble as they pivot into the SEC, a conference that I think only at the upper tier of Georgia and Alabama is superior to the Big 12. But athletically, the type of players they get in the SEC will be really difficult. They get 4- and 5-star guys. How did they not have talent to win last year? It doesn't make sense. They lost to Kansas State. It sent them into a tailspin, and I can't explain that, other than the fact that maybe he's a little too far out for himself in terms of, is he a head coach? I hope he is. I love Brent. He's a good human being. But I've never thought with his volatile personality that he is going to be a successful head coach. And this season might tell that tale.
All right, Fitz. Well, we fully expect and can't wait to see. Could you go stir something up, please, with somebody, some coach somewhere, mix it up a little bit, get us a soundbite. It is the slowest week of the sports calendar. So if you could manufacture some drama for us, we'd be greatly appreciative.
How do you guys feel about an old media member fighting a mascot? Not like play fighting like mascots. I'm looking at the Bearcat mascot right now. First of all, nobody should ever say Willie Wildcat is terrifying after you see the Bearcat. It is unbelievable, but the dude inside of the mascot is probably 6'10". He is a monster. He's a unit, and I'm going to go tackle him. He'll never see it coming, guys. I mean, I got to blindside him. I will get into
Conor McGregor sort of set a precedent there. So you better hit him hard. Huh? Conor McGregor sent someone to the hospital in a mascot suit. So you've got a high bar to reach on mascot fighting.
I can assure you, if I do this, someone will be going to the hospital.
Yeah.
It probably won't be the mascot, but one of us will.
All right. We'll make sure our guy TJ Cleveland's rolling on that. So don't hit him until the cameras are on. And then we appreciate it. It'll give us it'll give us fodder.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, I just want TJ's bosses to know he's working very hard here. He's been very diligent, and he's a fine young man.
Okay. Well, I'll pass that message along. I don't believe you, but I'll pass that along to other people that matter far more. All right, Fitz, enjoy it. GoPowerCat.com. I assume you guys are feeding the site there with a lot of great content from Media Days.
Yeah, we got 4 of us down here, and the young guys are kicking it. And Zach Carlson, my video guy, is cranking out stuff. And I took a little break to talk to you guys, but I'm back at it to write a column and do some daily deliveries. And we had a lot of content up from yesterday, including a couple videos and a podcast that are all available at GoPowerCat.com right now.
Check it out at Life of Fitz on Twitter. Fitz, we appreciate it. Next week, we'll have it all in the books, and we'll be blazing ahead onto the season. Be good down there.
It's here, brothers. It's here. Let's do this football thing.
There goes Tim Fitzgerald, publisher of GoPowerCat.com. Always appreciate the weekly visits with Fitz. We're going to take a quick break. Some Salvador Perez news. Tommy and I will be back to break it all down. The IHOP hotline is open, 869-1240. We'll be right back with more Sports Daily right after this.
time to get back to the sports talk.
All right, let's do this thing. Go.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
Welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily on KFH. Tommy, we got Salvador Perez news. Hit me.
John Morosi from Major League Baseball, one of the reporters, insiders for baseball, has an update on Salvador Perez, saying that the market is quiet at the moment for Salvador Perez. He's got full no trade protection, which we've not really discussed that part of what Salvador Perez has in his contract. And the Royals value his presence as they add young talent. He's got obviously 2 years and $44 million remaining on his contract after this season. Of course, John Morosi with MLB Network reporting that today, that right now there are no conversations about Salvador Perez being traded.
Yeah, I mean, the full no trade came up when this very first came up, and it sounds to me like he's willing to waive that for the right situation. I don't know what his eagerness is to do that. But it does limit potentially your trade partners. Like if he doesn't like the landing spot, the bigger hangup is going to be that money. He's owed $22 million a year the next 2 years. That's the hangup, and that's where. And we talked about this in the beginning. Like if there is a trade partner out there who is willing to give you something that makes your organization definitively better down the road, then John Sherman's got to pony up and eat some or a lot of that money. That's what you can do as an owner to show the fans that you're ready to win, is you can help facilitate a move like that. But Tommy, if there's not, even if he's willing to do that, like if this isn't a trade that brings you back legitimate prospects, right? Like don't trade Salvador Perez just to trade him. If you get good players back, okay. But if nobody's going to offer up much for Salvador Perez, then don't trade him, because he does offer value to the organization. There are 2 players for the Kansas City Royals that people want to see play baseball, that people care about seeing play baseball: Salvador Perez and Bobby Witt Jr. That's it. So if you're going to trade, Perez, but it's just because you're like, well, he's not really going to help us in the rebuild on the field, because no, he will help you. He'll help you because he's one of the very, 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 very few things that people actually care about when you're talking about fans going to baseball games. Your organization at least having a face to it, right? Salvador Perez is going to be in the Hall of Fame. Like, it's okay to hang on to that if nobody's willing to give you anything. I never like this idea, and you hear it all the time, of like, you have to trade somebody just because you're not winning this year. Well, what do you do? You're wasting your time. Why do you have to have them? Like, no, you don't. Not in every situation, right? Like, that's not always the case. If you're not going to get anything back for Salvador Perez, and you're not going to save money, which nobody cares that the Royals are saving money, right? There's no need to do that. Then don't trade him. He's everything to your franchise. He is on the Mount Rushmore of your franchise. Probably, for most people, number 2 of important players in your team's history with George Brett. I think for a lot of people that didn't actively watch George Brett play baseball, he's number 1. So be careful here. Don't just do it to do it. If there's not a good trade partner, then hang on. Who cares? Salvador Perez is great.
And I wonder what Perez's feeling is if there was a trade market for him as far as waiving his no trade clause. And I really haven't thought about that part of it. The fact that he's a veteran and he's got that no trade protection, in his contract right now for being around for so long, knowing that the Royals are in a rebuild, that it's going to take a while, right? And it's just this continuous rebuild. I mean, really, the Royals have done Salvador Perez a disservice he was involved in the World Series run. He was very young when that happened, but he was a key component of both of those World Series runs in 2014 and 2015. I remember the play in the wild card game against the Athletics in 2014. So he's been around for a while, but his prime years, the Royals have been really, really bad. And there's no light at the end of the tunnel. So I wonder if there was a team, and it'd probably depend upon the team, but if there was a team that approached the Royals with a substantial trade offer or whatever that is Perez inclined to waive his no trade clause? I don't know. I have no idea. That may be part of the reason why the trade market is very quiet around him, because he's saying, I'm probably going to exercise that clause and not be traded. I want to play in Kansas City. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that could very easily persuade teams to not even approach the Royals with a trade offer if they're all under the impression that Perez wants to be in Kansas City and will probably invoke that no trade clause.
I think it would be far more likely next year with 1 year left on the deal. Even 2 years from now, like if you're Perez, because Perez loves the Royals, he's a family guy, doing that for a half a season would be far more, if I'm in Salvador Perez's shoes, would be far more appealing than doing it now. I get it. And I don't like when people hold it against players who don't want to be traded. Like, you built the no trade in there for a reason, and both sides agreed to it. I suspect that Salvador Perez put it in there for the same reason that I would put it in there. I would be willing to take less money, whatever, but you can't just ship me away from my family. Like, you can't do that. I have no interest in that at this stage of my life. And I would suspect, again, based on what we know about Salvador Perez, that there's some of that in there. You got to think, like, sometimes we don't humanize athletes enough, because so often it is all about the money, right? But what is it reasonable, Tommy, that winning another World Series when you have one is not as important as not potentially being away from your young family for 2.5 years? Really? Because that's what would happen here.
Yeah. And again, I go back to the fact that this rebuild has been so bungled by the Royals over the last 5-6 years that out of everybody that has a right to be upset and frustrated and angry with that, it's Salvador Perez, because this guy was in the prime of his career, and he's got really, really productive years left, I would think. But man, like, I remember the 2019 year, and he hit 50 some home runs, and the Royals were terrible. It's like, think if the team was a contender then. Or the fact that, I could see Salvador Perez saying, all right, I'm going to hang on with this franchise as they rebuild. I'll be in my early 30s. I'll have a good young nucleus around me. We're going to build this thing up. We're going to make ourselves a contender. And then I can bookend my career with World Series runs at the beginning and at the end of my career. And there's none of that in sight right now. If I'm Perez, I would absolutely be frustrated with the way that this organization has bungled the rebuild over the last several years.
Yeah, it was 2021 when he had 48 home runs that you were referencing there in his age. That would have been his age 31 season. He's Tommy. Like, everyone thinks Salvador Perez is so old because he came up at such a young age. He's 33. Like, he's not that old. He's an all-star essentially every year. Just offensively speaking, probably this year, he's around as a catcher. Probably, where would he be? Probably still around the top 5 or so catchers offensively in baseball. Overall bat, he still, I think, plays where he can rotate around at DH. This isn't the year he's had in the past couple of years, probably, but he's on pace for about 30 home runs this year as a catcher, hitting about 250. I think that he's got value. He doesn't have value to another team at $22 million a year.
No.
But again, like, this is the face of a generation of your baseball team. This is a guy who has become an American citizen, who loves Kansas City. I mean, he should be as big a personality to the market as Mahomes and Kelsey. I mean, I know football's king, but like, that's the kind of impact he's had there. So it is okay to not trade him if you're the Royals. I totally get it. And it is also okay, because if it comes to this, and I really hope that it doesn't, that it's like Salvador Perez, they had a deal and he invoked his no trade. Because fans, that's going to make fans mad, and it should not make fans mad. The guy doesn't want to leave Kansas City. Take that as a compliment, right? He doesn't want to leave his family for 2.5 years. All right, see you guys later. I'll see you I'll see you in the wintertime. No, like, I get it. You put those no trades in there for a reason. Now, 2 years from now, if there's not as much money on the books and he's still, a 25 to 30 home run, 260-ish hitter, and they want to trade Salvador Perez, and even if it's more to give Salvador Perez a chance at a postseason run and you get whatever back, that's when it makes more sense, right? That's when, like, if you're Perez and you're this family guy, it's like, okay, well, now I'm going to take, what would it be, 4 months, 5 months away from the family to run out this baseball season. That to me seems far more reasonable. Now, I could be wrong about that. Salvador Perez could say, yeah, trade me. I want to go win somewhere. And that's fine too. He builds the no trade in for a reason. Both sides agreed to that clause. It's every right that he has to say, nope, not going anywhere. Thanks. Pay me here. I'll play my best and I'll help these young guys, which does have value. And that's what the Royals are citing in that report, right? Is that they want his impact on the young players. And I do think that has some value in baseball, maybe as much as any sport, to just have mentorship, especially when it's Salvador Perez, who's a Latin American player, and especially when Latin American players are so heavy into baseball and need to be a part, right, through the international portion of the development of what the Royals do in the future. Having Salvador Perez there, who's done it all the right way, yeah, that does have some value for an organization.
Yeah, it's going to be sad for me, I think, in 10 years when Salvador Perez is done with baseball, to look back and, realize the opportunities that were squandered, with his talent and marketability and, everything that Salvador Perez is and has been in his career, and knowing how bad the Royals were. Like, I think back to, the mid 2000s when the Royals were god awful. And there was that stretch where they were losing 100 games. It seemed like every single year there was no hope, no future. And there was really one guy I felt like at that time that hung on with the franchise, and that was Mike Sweeney. And Mike Sweeney was a nice player, and a good representative for the Royals, but not at the level of Salvador Perez as far as his popularity. This is kind of the same thing where you've got a really, really bad team and a really, really popular player. And it's going to be a bummer to me to look back on his career when it's all done, especially if he stays with the Royals for the duration, and feeling like, man, like there were opportunities to build teams around him. And it was bungled. It never worked out with the organization to be able to do that in the right way.
Yeah, it'll be okay. Like, Salvador Perez won a World Series. He was a part of, the greatest run probably in team history. He was at the centerpiece of it. Like, I don't think we need to be sad about any of this. Like, in 2014, 15, 16, like, he was great. He was an all-star each of those years. He was just entering his prime as a player. He is given, quite frankly, the team-friendly deals for most of his career. So you can miss me with the fact that he's overpaid, because before this contract, he was criminally underpaid based on production. Go back and look at his first contract, by the way, based on his production. He's been nothing but great to the Royals. If they don't want to trade him and he doesn't want to be traded, I have absolutely no issue with that. And I really hope that people don't try to, paint some like, oh, I didn't want to be traded and win. Like, why? Winning is everything. Winning's a lot. Winning ain't everything, man. Family's everything. And if he doesn't want to be traded for that reason, that's fine. That's fine with me. Seeing him there in a Royals cap at the All-Star game with his big old personality, that's got value too. And I'm perfectly happy if that's the way this plays out. The reality is nobody's going to trade for his money anyway. So the Royals may not be that motivated to go out and eat $22 million. That's the part of it that makes it difficult. And let's be real honest, Salvador Perez, a Hall of Famer. I don't think, even if the money wasn't a factor, he's bringing back just some massive package anymore. He would help a lot of teams, but he's a 33-year-old catcher who's not going to be catching for much longer. So then it's as a DH, and that value does go down in the market. I mean, that's the reality of it. But if nothing happens, I'll be happy. I hope Salvador Perez rides off into the sunset as a Royal and goes into goes into Cooperstown with a Royals cap on, because that's what needs to happen.
Yeah, I think that he's right at the cusp of doing that, and knowing that, John Morosi is reporting that there really is no traction on any kind of talks. I think if there was, it'd be more than likely that we were going to see him traded. And I know that there was a period of time where, it seemed not likely, but it seemed like a real possibility on the table that the Royals could move him, and maybe they still will. But I didn't really understand the terms necessarily of his contract, the money that's left, the no trade clause, all of that. Those are all hurdles and obstacles for any team that potentially would want him. Does Salvi want to go there? Does he want to leave? And, he's been on the record saying that he loves Kansas City. So I think that at the end of the day, it would be different. And you talked about the fan base, like, or some fans not being happy, that he's not traded. But I think that the majority of the fan base, it'd be different if he was blocking somebody, and he's not, right?
What if he does? But what if he does?
But we're not there yet, right? And so that's not a case right now. He's got 2 years left on his contract. He's not blocking anybody. And even if, let's say that there's a big hotshot catcher coming up, I mean, Salvi's going to be a DH, right? Like, right. I don't see, like, there are options on the table where he can remain a Royal long-term. And I don't think there really be a big argument that he's blocking anybody.
What if he did, though? How do you think fans would handle that? Like, what if it was, it's not even a hypothetical to say there was a big trade package for him, because that's not going to happen, even if the money's not but a package, right? Hey, there's a trade partner on the hook. Salvador Perez is blocking. He doesn't want to go to, wherever it is. How do you think fans are going to handle that? I've laid it out. I would have no issue with that, because Salvador Perez earned the right to put that in his contract. But how do you think fans would receive that?
I think you'd be split. I mean, I think that the emotional side of it, people are going to want to see Salvi continue with the Royals, but I don't know. I mean, it's a really, really difficult predicament. And that's why, just in general, with the Salvador Perez situation, with the Major League Baseball draft, with these young players, the entire thing, like, the front office for the Royals, like, they have painted themselves into so many corners right now where there's really not just a clear-cut, really simple answer for how we get from point A to point B. There are a lot of moving parts here. There are really very few, if any, clear-cut, like, this is the right way to go moving forward. I think that that's what makes this so difficult for the Royals.
Yeah, I agree. And the fans are turning on the organization too.
Yep.
Absolute worst time. You're going to try and beg them for a new ballpark. I don't know. We'll see. Trade deadline is here. If it's not Salvi, it's got to at least be Scott Barlow, maybe Hernandez out of the bullpen. I do think that's probably where you start. Outside of that, I don't think there's anything there. Don't trade Bobby Witt Jr. Be crazy, by the way. Don't listen to those people. They're nuts to trade that kind of player right now. 869-1240 is the IHOP hotline. We'll come back. Congratulations, by the way, to Neil for winning some HTO today. Beat the Heat. Double Drips Rewards Day there. If you're an HTO fan, you can get double rewards, by the way. Sports Daily coming right back. We'll have more. It's Albracht and Castor on KFH.
869-1240.
Time to get busy.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
All right, Tommy. The chatter continues. UConn chatter right now is that they think they're headed to the Big 12. So I still continue to wonder, like, what this all looks like. And it's interesting. UConn does make a lot of sense to me. But you can see some of that chatter online right now, talking about what people are saying behind the scenes. Just search UConn Big 12 and you can find it. But UConn would be a cool addition. Again, we're looking at basketball. I just wonder with the Big 12 or with the Pac-12. When is Pac-12 media days? Like, when does Klaikoff have to get in front of people and be asked questions? That's what I want to know.
But that's going to be must-see TV. That's about the only thing with the Pac-12 that's going to be must-see TV. I'm seeing this report. I don't know if this is the one that you're referencing or not, but that hearing of like boosters with UConn, saying that it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when they're going to be in the Big 12. Certainly interesting. And Brett Yormark, by the way, didn't mention UConn by name specifically yesterday in media days, but he was asked the question about expansion and about if the Big 12 would consider a non-Power 5 school. Really, the only one, I guess, outside of maybe the San Diego State situation would be UConn. And Yormark was very diplomatic in his answer, saying that if the profiles fit, it wouldn't necessarily matter that a school is in a Power 5 conference currently or not. So, I mean, I think that you can definitely connect the dots. He's talking about UConn.
I mean, they want to be in New York City, right?
Yeah.
That's as big a brand in that part of the country as there is. It's a natural and easy fit. They need, if they pivot, who knows what happens with San Diego State and what they get out west. And, maybe they choose to make an even larger, East Coast presence. Maybe somebody else is on there. I don't know. But something will happen. I just think it's the timing of it, because I think there's one more massive shakeup to happen. But I suppose there could be two when the ACC gets done, and if the Big 12 is able to do something else in the meantime. The problem with all of it, and this is what the Pac-12 faces, is it's a really uneasy economic time. And with all the cuts and the networks, like I just like the appetite may have diminished in the short term significantly versus where it was 6 months ago. I don't know. That chatter's out there. UConn. I hope they come in. I think it'd be cool. I think it'd be awesome for basketball the way they've resurged. We appreciate everybody tuning in today. You can always go back and listen to the program via the Odyssey app. It'll all be there for you. You know what? Let's do, Jad. Let's do some more Win Surge vouchers. We've already given away one of these today. One of these sets. Andre took those. Neil was a winner to do today with some HTL. Well, let's do it again. We've got the Win Surge vouchers. Again, the voucher's good for any game of your choice, right? So you take the vouchers. You can cash them in at any point. We'll do another 4-pack of those Win Surge vouchers, and we'll do it. I don't know. Let's do it for our second caller this time. So second caller to those, 869-1240. You can get your hands on those, courtesy of us here at Sports Daily and KFH. Don't forget, you can also find our video streams on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. It is Big 12 Media Days. We've had a lot of content there. That's it, though, Tommy. Like, after today, we're done. We're done with Big 12 Media Day. Now, I don't, that's not fun. Like, because now we have to go another, 4 days before we get to the TBT. But the TBT chatter will pick up. Marcus Morris is talking today to the media, I think for the first time since this all-star KU staff was put together in team and roster, and Marcus Morris is going to be the coach. So yeah, we'll hear that. We'll react to that a little bit if he says anything interesting tomorrow. But good luck on the Win Surge tickets. We'll come back. We'll wrap it up. Tell you what's on tap today right after this.
For the ones who know safety isn't a catchphrase, it's a culture.
and the ones who help make sure everyone makes it home safe. For the safety-minded who watch everyone's backs, Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry, as well as safety assessments and training to keep your facilities safe and your people safer. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
We're going abroad for the first time in years. To Spain.
But we don't speak Spanish.
So we started using Babbel.
And started learning Spanish fast.
With Babbel, you can start having conversations in another language in just 3 weeks. Babbel's conversational method teaches you real-life words and phrases. And with Babbel's interactive bite-sized lessons, you'll remember what you learned.
¿Cómo te llamas?
¿Cómo te llamas?
¿De dónde eres?
¿De dónde eres?
When you learn a language, you want to actually use it. Babbel is designed with that goal in mind.
In just 3 weeks, we're starting to have conversations in Spanish.
Estoy muy emocionado para ir a España contigo.
Aww. He just said, I'm very excited to go to Spain with you. Vamos a tener mucha diversión.
And that means we're going to have so much fun.
Sí. Gracias, Babbel.
Babbel, language for life. Celebrating 10 million subscriptions sold. Now try Babbel for free at Babbel.com. Just go to Babbel.com and start learning a new language today. That's Babbel.com. Babbel.com.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
This story is called The Ugly Truth About Timeshare. If you think you've done your family a favor by buying a timeshare, you need my help. Hello, I'm Chuck McDowell, CEO and founder of Wesley Financial Group. 10 years ago, I started helping folks cancel their timeshare. And in the process, started what's now called the timeshare cancellation industry. Timeshare is the only thing that you can buy that you can't tell me how much it's going to cost or when it's going to end. When you buy a timeshare, you give them a blank check to fill out any amount they want for annual maintenance and assessment fees. The crazy thing is, this never ends. Even when you die, your family's now going to be stuck with this burden. Stop the insanity today. Call my office now. If we take you as a client, I guarantee we'll cancel your timeshare or you'll pay nothing.
Call for your free information kit. 800-981-4455. That's 800-981-4455. 800-981-4455.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same, but is 95% cheaper? And you can get it online? Just go to 4hims.com/radio. Through Hims, you'll get a free medical consultation, discreet shipping if prescribed, a 100% online process, and trusted generic alternatives to the name brands to treat ED at up to 95% off. That's right, the same active ingredient as the brand name for 95% less. It's the same ED medication, still prescribed by a licensed medical provider, but with zero copay, no expensive appointments, and no awkward face-to-face conversations. To start your free online visit, you need to go to this exclusive address, 4hims.com/radio. That's 4hims.com/radio for your free online visit. FORHIMS.com/RADIO.
The KFH Studios, powered by Devon James Injury Lawyers. Call 888-8888. That's 888-8888.
I'm Tristan Quick with BetQL. I know it might feel early to bet on the NBA Rookie of the Year, but I have some way too early thoughts. Victor Wembanyama is minus 200 to win it, but I actually think he's going to take some time to acclimate to the NBA. Scoot Henderson, on the other hand, will start right away. We'll have high usage as a guard, and he's been a pro for 2 years now. He's plus 350, and there's even better odds for him if you shop around. So bet Scoot for Rookie of the Year and thank me later. I'm Tristan Crick. Over you, be the books.
At Grainger, we're for the ones who pay attention to every little detail. The ones who fuss, tinker, and sweat the small stuff. Because you know the tiniest thing can make the biggest difference when it comes to keeping business moving. We get it. We're the same way, offering access to product experts to help you quickly and easily find what you need. So whatever your industry, you know you're always getting professional-grade products. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
I'ma give it to you when you want it.
Do you have the Odyssey app yet?
I'ma give it to you.
Listen to us plus other Odyssey radio stations
when you want it,
and hundreds of your favorite podcasts. Get it in the App Store. AUDACY.
Hello, Wichita. Start your day laughing with the Bob and Tom Show. Find us mornings right here on 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFA.
All right, that'll do it for us, everybody. Glad to be here with you. We got one more coming up tomorrow, a Friday edition. We'll look back at everything in totality, digest a little bit more of what happened today and is happening today at Big 12 Media Days. Coming up right after us, the Jim Rome Show, followed by Bob and Jeff here locally from 2 to 4. You get an hour of Maggie and Perloff. Zach Gell takes it at 5. That's the day's programming. Congratulations to all our contest winners, by the way. Rick, Neil, Andre, Windsurge, HTO. We'll continue to do a lot of giveaways this time of year. Appreciate it, everybody. For Tommy Castor and Jad Chambers, I'm Jacob Albracht. We'll see you tomorrow. That'll do.